Old money and new money can sit on the exact same net worth and still be separated by an entire philosophy. New money is proof of a personal achievement, a company built, a deal closed, a breakthrough earned inside a single lifetime. It tends to be loud because it still has something to prove. It's fresh, it's still finding its shape in the world. Old money is different. It isn't really a personal accomplishment so much as an inheritance of behavior, a set of instincts absorbed so early that heirs rarely remember being taught them at all. It was never truly about how much a family had. It's about how a family behaves with what it had. And that behavior follows an unwritten code, refined across generations, and stress-tested against nearly every financial collapse of the modern era, from the panics of the 19th century to the crashes of our own time. This isn't only an American or European stories either. Versions of the same code show up in old merchant and industrial families across Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. Different languages, same underlying instincts. Break the code, and even a great fortune, no matter how large it once was, follow it, and wealth becomes something close to self-perpetuating, passed down like a second language nobody remembers learning. Over the next few minutes, we're walking through 10 rules that make up that code. Some will surprise you, others will explain behavior you've noticed in wealthy families for years without ever understanding why. And rule number 10, the one we're starting with, might be the most misunderstood law of wealth in modern culture. Rule number 10, never discuss money in public. In old money circles, there's a topic considered ruder than politics or religion, and that's money itself. Not wealth as a concept, the actual numbers. What something costs, what someone earns, what an inheritance is worth. Ask a member of an old money family how much their house is worth, and you'll likely get a graceful change of subject, delivered so smoothly you won't notice it happened until minutes later. This isn't shyness, it's strategy, dressed up as manners. Old money understands something new. Fortunes often learn the hard way. The moment you feel the need to announce how wealthy you are, you've already revealed a kind of insecurity. Confidence doesn't require an audience. Old money's version of power is quieter, built on the assumption of wealth rather than the declaration of. In certain long-established circles, this ethic even has a name that's become fashionable again in recent years: quiet luxury. Clothes are expensive but unbranded. Cars are reliable and sometimes decades old, rarely the newest model available. A family might own an entire building without ever mentioning it at dinner. Compare that to how new wealth often behaves. The visible logos, the price tags left on for effect, the social proof of a lifestyle broadcast for an audience. None of this makes new money wrong. It's simply a different relationship with money, one still tied closely to the achievement itself rather than several generations removed from it. New wealth wants to be recognized. Old wealth wants to be assumed. There's a reason this discretion has outlasted trends, recessions, and every changing fashion for displaying wealth. Silence limits exposure to jealousy, to solicitation, to a weaker negotiating position, to simple resentment. It also happens to be good business. In any negotiation, whether it's buying a property, backing a company, or settling a dispute quietly out of court, the party whose financial position is unknown holds the stronger hand. A family whose net worth is unknown is a family that can move through the world without a target already painted on its back. But staying quiet about money is only the surface behavior. Underneath it sits something far more calculated. Decisions about who gets access to the family at all, starting with the person they choose to marry. Rule number 9, marry for the family, not just for love. Here's an uncomfortable truth old money families rarely say out loud. In their world, marriage was never purely a private decision. For centuries, marriage was one of the primary mechanisms by which fortunes were built, protected, or quietly lost. And old money has never fully unlearned that lesson, even in an age that treats love as the only requirement for a wedding. This doesn't mean romance is absent. It means romance shares the room with a much older set of questions. Does this person understand what they're marrying into? Will they protect the family's assets, reputation, and privacy, or expose them to risk? European royal houses had been playing this game for centuries before America ever entered the picture, using marriage to seal alliances between nations much the way a modern company might use a merger. Then, during the Gilded Age, a wave of wealthy American heiresses married into cash-strapped European aristocracy in exchanges that were plainly transactional. American capital in return for European title, each side gaining something the other lacked. History remembers it, without much subtlety, as the era of the dollar princess, and it remains one of the clearest examples of marriage functioning as financial and social strategy rather than pure sentiment. Today, that same instinct survives in quieter forms. Prenuptial agreements, once considered unromantic or even insulting, are treated in old money families as simple due diligence, no different than insuring a home. Family approval of a partner, while less formal than in past centuries, still carries real weight. A partner is being evaluated not only as a companion, but as a future co-steward of everything the family has spent generations building. New money, by contrast, often marries the way most people are taught to, for feeling, for chemistry, for a story worth telling. There's nothing wrong with that instinct on its own, but it's also part of why sudden fortunes are so frequently split apart by expensive public divorces, in ways old money's more guarded approach was specifically designed to prevent. Because protecting a fortune from love is only half the equation. The other half is protecting it from something old money fears just as much: the fortune's own owner. Rule number 8, live well below your means. Ask someone to picture immense enormous wealth, and they'll probably picture spending: the yacht, the private jets, the endless renovation. Old money quietly breaks that image. Many of the wealthiest, most established families in the world live in a way that would strike outsiders as almost disappointingly modest, at least in their daily habits. The same coat gets worn for a decade, furniture is inherited, not upgraded, cars are driven until they stop running, then repaired rather than replaced. This isn't a performance of poverty, it's discipline, treated as a core family value rather than a financial necessity. John D. Rockefeller Sr., one of the wealthiest men in American history, was known long after his fortune was secure for a kind of personal frugality outsiders often found almost comic, a trait widely documented in accounts of his life, and one he's said to have instilled in his own children early through structured allowances and an expectation of accountability. That instinct didn't disappear with his generation. A version of it still runs through many old money households today, where the size of a family's assets and the modesty of its daily spending are almost inversely related. Why? Because old money understands a mathematical truth: new money sometimes learns too late. Wealth isn't preserved by how much comes in, it's preserved by how little goes needlessly out. A fortune spent down to match a lifestyle eventually disappears, no matter how large it started. A fortune protected by restraint can outlast, by centuries, the person who built it. New wealth, still close to the moment it was earned, often spends in a way that mirrors the achievement itself. Bigger houses, faster cars, visible proof that the effort paid off. Old money already assumes the proof. It doesn't need restating, so the spending simply doesn't happen at the same rate. This same instinct for restraint extends far beyond money. It extends to information itself, which is where old money's obsession with privacy begins. Rule number 7: guard privacy like a fortress. Old money families are notoriously difficult to research. Public records are minimal, interviews are rare, photographs are scarce outside of official events. This isn't coincidence, and it isn't paranoia. It's policy, refined over generations that learned, sometimes painfully, exactly what visibility can cost. The early 20th century offered a brutal lesson in this. High-profile wealth once meant high-profile risk, and a handful of infamous incidents involving prominent families during that era pushed many wealthy households toward a far more guarded, security-conscious way of living, hiring private staff, avoiding public disclosure of family details, and treating personal information the way a business treats a trade secret. That posture never fully relaxed, it's simply modernized. Today's version looks less dramatic, but works the same way. Family matters stay inside the family. Financial details are handled through private family offices rather than public statements. Marriages, disagreements, even ordinary daily routines are kept out of public commentary as a matter of habit, not scandal avoidance. When something does leak, the response is rarely outrage, it's simply silence, and the story fades for lack of fuel to burn. There's a psychological logic underneath all of this. Information is leverage. A family whose finances, relationships, and decisions are unknown cannot be easily predicted, pressured, or exploited. This is also why so much of old money's legal architecture is built around anonymity, trusts structured so a beneficiary's name never has to appear on a public deed, non-disclosure agreements for household staff, holding companies layered between a family and anything it owns. Privacy isn't about having something to hide, it's about preserving options. New money often does the opposite, sometimes without realizing the trade-off it's made. Visibility can feel like validation, a following, feature, a headline as proof that the climb was real. Old money already has nothing left to prove, so the exposure simply isn't worth what it costs. This same protective instinct, treating certain things as too important to ever risk losing, extends to more than information. It extends to property, to businesses, and to the physical inheritance a family leaves behind. Rule number 6: never sell the legacy. There are certain things an old money family will sell only as an absolute last resort. The family home, a founding business, an heirloom passed down through generations. These aren't just line items on a balance sheet. They're treated as physical evidence that the family exists across time, not merely in the present moment. This tradition runs deep. In European aristocratic tradition, legal structures like entail were specifically designed to prevent estates from being broken up, sold, or divided by any single generation, binding land to the family name itself rather than to whichever heir happened to be holding the title at the time. The logic was blunt. No single generation gets to end what took centuries to build. That same instinct shows up in American old money today, just without the legal enforcement. Descendants of George Vanderbilt have kept the Biltmore estate, one of the family's grand Gilded Age houses, in the family for well over 100 years, still run today as a business by the 4th and 5th generations rather than sold off, even as much of the broader Vanderbilt railroad fortune famously scattered within a few generations. It's a small but telling detail. Even a family whose overall wealth shrank dramatically still fought to hold on to certain symbolic pieces of it. Selling the legacy sends a message: old money families work hard to avoid sending, that the family story is ending, that its permanence was only ever an illusion. So even in hard years, certain assets are the very last to go, protected almost like a flag that must never be lowered. The same logic extends well beyond real estate. Certain European banking houses, vineyards, and luxury ateliers have stayed under the control of a single family for well over a century, resisting acquisition offers that would have made any one generation enormously richer. in favor of keeping the name and the craft intact for the next one. New money, without generational assets to anchor it, naturally treats property differently as upgradable, tradable, a reflection of current success rather than accumulated history. Neither approach is wrong, but only one of them is built to survive the family that created it. And protecting the legacy isn't only about property, it's also about what a family gives away and how quietly they give it. Rule number 5, give quietly without applause. Philanthropy is expected of old money family, but the way it's done reveals almost as much as the giving itself. There's a long-standing concept in aristocratic tradition called noblesse oblige, the idea that privilege carries an obligation, that those born into advantage owe something back to the society that allowed the advantage to exist in the first place. Old money families rarely say the phrase out loud, but many are raised inside its logic from early childhood. Andrew Carnegie put a version of this philosophy directly into writing in his 1889 essay, widely known today as The Gospel of Wealth. In it, he argued that the wealthy were essentially trustees of their fortune, obligated to live without ostentation and to actively redistribute their wealth during their own lifetime rather than simply passing it on unexamined. That single essay helped shape an entire era of American giving, from libraries to universities to institutions that still operate today. The instinct behind it wasn't purely generous, it was also protective. A society with extreme visible inequality and no counterbalancing generosity from its wealthiest members tends eventually to turn on those same families. Giving in that light isn't only kindness, it's insurance. What separates old money's giving from performative charity is structure. Rather than one-time headline-driven donations, wealth is often funneled through family foundation, institutions designed to give consistently across generations, guided by a mission rather than a single moment. A family name might appear on a building or a scholarship, but the giving itself is rarely tied to a single social media post or press site. It's simply part of how the family operates, quietly, year after year. New money philanthropy is often more visible by necessity. Galas, campaigns, public commitments that build trust and reputation for a fortune still introducing itself to the world. That's not a flaw. Old money has already been introduced. It doesn't need the announcement anymore. But before any family can give responsibly, its children first have to learn something even more fundamental: how to actually deserve what they'll one day inherit. Rule number 4, children must earn their inheritance. One of the most misunderstood parts of old money culture is how its children are actually raised. Outsiders often imagine a life of unlimited spending from birth. In reality, many old money households run in almost the opposite direction, deliberately limiting what children receive long before those children are trusted with the full picture of the family's wealth. Small allowances tied to chores or responsibilities are common, even in households worth many millions. Some families are known for having required children to track their own spending in ledgers from a young age, treating financial literacy as a skill to be drilled the same way one might drill a language or an instrument. The goal isn't scarcity for its own sake, it's preparation. Old money families have watched what happens when the opposite approach is taken, when children are given full, unrestricted access to wealth without ever learning its weight. There's even a name for the result in pop psychology: affluenza, a loosely used term for the entitlement and diminished motivation that can come from growing up with more resources than responsibility. Old money's answer to this risk is structural: delay full access, require demonstrated competence, and treat inheritance as something to be qualified for, not simply collected at birth. This is why children of old money families are often quietly pushed into unglamorous first jobs, internships at unrelated companies, or long apprenticeships inside the family business before ever being handed real authority. The public image may suggest a life handed to them. The private reality is closer to an extended, mostly invisible audition, one that can last decades and is rarely announced as an audition at all. New money, still adjusting to its own sudden success, doesn't always have this particular playbook yet. Sanrenze, sometimes extending the same unrestricted comfort to children that the earner never had themselves, without the generational lessons about what that comfort can quietly cost. But money and responsibility are only part of what gets passed down. The other part is harder to quantify and arguably worth even more. Rule number 3, education over ostentation. If you ask an old money family what they consider their true inheritance, the honest answer is rarely the money itself. It's the education, and not merely academic degrees, but a much broader kind of training: etiquette, language, cultural literacy, the ability to hold a conversation about art or history without any visible effort. Sociologists have a term for this: cultural capital, a concept most associated with the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, describing the non-financial social assets knowledge, taste, manner of speech, cultural fluency that help people move confidently through elite spaces. Old money families have been operating on this principle for centuries, long before it ever had an academic name attached to it. Historically, this took the shape of the Grand Tour: young aristocrats sent across Europe for months or even years to absorb art, architecture, and language firsthand, building a kind of worldliness that money alone couldn't purchase. Modern old money has its own version: boarding schools chosen as much for the social network and cultural formation they provide as for academics. Second and third languages introduced early, music lessons treated less as a hobby and more as fluency in another form of communication entirely. It shows up in small, almost invisible tests: knowing which fork belongs to which course without glancing at a neighbour's plate, knowing how to hold a conversation at a formal dinner without dominating it, knowing when silence is more appropriate than commentary. None of it is difficult to learn, but it is difficult to fake convincingly, which is exactly the point. The logic here is almost defensive. Money can be lost to a bad investment, a recession, a lawsuit, a single reckless heir. Refinement, judgment, and cultural fluency are far harder to lose, and they're often exactly what allows a family to rebuild, even after a genuine financial setback. A poorly raised heir with a fortune can lose everything within a decade. A well-educated heir with nothing can often rebuild something within one. New money frequently invests heavily in visible luck. For its children, the newest gadget, branded clothing, extravagant party, a natural instinct when the family's own hard-won comfort is still relatively fresh. Old money, several generations removed from that scarcity, tends to invest instead in things that don't photograph nearly as well, but last considerably longer. Of course, none of this, the manners, the education, the careful marriages, means anything without the legal and financial architecture to actually hold it all together across time. Rule number 2, build structures that outlive. Here's something old money understands that few individuals ever fully absorb. No single person, no matter how brilliant, can be trusted to protect a fortune forever. People make emotional decisions. People get divorced, get sued, get sick, get reckless, or simply die at the wrong moment. So instead of relying indefinitely on any one person, old money builds structures designed to survive all of it. Trusts are the most obvious example. Legal arrangements that can control how and when wealth is distributed across multiple generations, often preventing any single heir from accessing or liquidating an entire fortune all at once. Family offices serve a similar function on the operational side, functioning almost like a private company whose sole client is the family itself, managing investment, property, philanthropy, and governance long after the person who built the original fortune is gone. The clearest early example in American history belongs to the Rockefellers. In 1882, John D. Rockefeller established what's widely considered the first full-service single-family office in the United States, an internal operation built specifically to manage the family's collective assets across generations, rather than leaving each heir to manage their own portion independently. The idea was less about controlling individuals and more about protecting the whole, treating the fortune as something the family collectively stewards, rather than something any one person fully owns. This is a profound shift in thinking from my money to the family's money. It requires giving up a certain amount of personal control in exchange for long-term durability, a trade many wealthy individuals, especially those who built their own fortune from nothing, find genuinely difficult to make. New money, still holding wealth personally and directly, is naturally more exposed to the very risks these structures were designed to prevent. A bad marriage, a lawsuit, a single poor decision capable of undoing everything that was built. Old money isn't necessarily smarter about avoiding mistakes. It has simply built systems that can absorb a mistake without the whole structure collapsing. And that brings us to the final rule, the one that quietly underlies every other rule on this list. Rule number 1, think in centuries, not seasons. Everything covered so far, the silence around money, the strategic marriages, the frugality, the privacy, the reluctance to sell, the quiet giving, the earned inheritances, the emphasis on education, the trusts and family offices, all of it comes back to a single underlying habit of mind. Old money thinks in centuries, not quarters, not years, not even a single lifetime. Ask a founder of a new company what success looks like, and you'll likely hear about the next product launch, the next funding round, the next milestone on the horizon. Ask an old money family what success looks like, and if they answer honestly at all, you may hear something closer to this. The family still exists, still holds together, still matters 100 years from now. This mindset is sometimes described as cathedral thinking, a reference to the great cathedrals of medieval Europe, structures whose construction often outlasted the lifetimes of everyone who began building them. Nobody who laid the first stone expected to see the finished building with their own eyes. They built it anyway, for people they would never meet. Old money families apply a version of that same logic to wealth itself. Decisions are made not for the comfort of the person making them, but for the benefit of descendants who haven't been born yet. This single mental shift explains nearly everything else on this list. Why spend loudly if the goal is a fortune meant to outlast you by 200 years? Why marry impulsively if the marriage is meant to strengthen something far larger than either person inside it? Why hand a fortune to an untested heir if that heir is meant to be merely one steward in a much longer chain stretching in both directions, backward toward ancestors and forward toward descendants? Most people understandably don't think this way. Most fortunes aren't built to survive more than a generation or two, because most of us are wired to think in the time frame of a single human life, and reasonably so. There's no real villain in that story, just a difference in horizon. One way of thinking optimizes for the person living right. The other optimizes for a version of the family that doesn't exist yet. Old money's defining trait was never really the money at all. It's the decision to think, plan and act as though the family will still be standing long after everyone currently in it is gone. 10 rule. On the surface, they look like a list of behaviors, what to say, what to buy, who to marry, what to keep. But underneath, they're really one philosophy wearing 10 different disguises. The belief that true wealth was never about the money at all. It was about what the money is protecting. everything: a name, a set of value, a family that intends to exist long after the current generation has passed through it. This is the part most people miss when they picture old money. It isn't really about mansions or trust funds or the right schools, and it was never really about the fork at the dinner table either. Those are just the visible edges of something much deeper, a set of instincts around restraint, privacy, structure, and long-term thinking, passed down so quietly that most heirs probably couldn't explain the rules if you asked them direct. They simply lived them, the way you might live the habits of a household you grew up in, without ever noticing they were habits at all. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside all 10 rules. Wealth that actually lasts isn't primarily a financial achievement, it's a psychological one, a willingness to delay gratification, not just for years, but for generations, to build things you'll never fully enjoy yourself, for the benefit of people you'll never meet. Whether or not you ever inherit a name attached to any of this, that same instinct thinking further ahead than feels natural, protecting what matters more than displaying it, is available to anyone patient enough to actually practice it. If this pulled back a curtain you didn't expect, there's more behind it. Subscribe if you'd like to keep going deeper into the hidden codes of wealth and status, and if you're curious how new money tries and often fails to buy its way into old money's world, that's exactly what we unpack next.